So tonight's Facebook Live is called The Magic of Doing What Scares You. Okay, so this topic is really about fear. And if you're willing to take a good look at your fears, magical results will come from that. How does that sound? So imagine that fear is actually telling you exactly where you need to go or what you need to do. So it's really a gift with any fear or resistance, and fear and resistance are very much related. So I'm not talking about the kind of fear in your life, like, or fear for your life where like you're really in danger. I'm not really talking about that kind of fear. But it's more about the not so real fear that you can kind of navigate through. And so, for example, in my coaching process, maybe I will ask a question like, what might be the worst case scenario for you, the worst possible outcome if you do that thing, or if you don't do that thing. And that's kind of an interesting question, because it kind of maybe forces you to really connect with that, to connect with your fear and say, well, what if I do that? Then this is the worst that can happen. Or what if I don't do that? Then this is the worst that can happen. And it kind of tends to say, and then maybe a follow-up question would be like, well, can you deal with that? Is that okay for you? And if that happened, what would we do to address that thing, that other thing, right? Like, can we manage that? So I find that for a lot of people, it's a very, it's a great question to kind of take the heavy off of your shoulders. So yeah, so, and maybe that thing is like moving forward on your business somehow, or maybe it's investing in a course, moving cities, something kind of bigger like that. So, I mean, so these kinds of things usually aren't so bad, right? These kind of fears. Would you agree with that? I would, yeah, probably, right? So, although sometimes these kinds of fears are overwhelming, and really the overwhelming part is the actual facing of those fears. And more accurately, it's kind of about listening to your intuition and inner voice, and maybe your critical voice. Does that make sense? So if you're, and I'm going to kind of jump in here and use some examples and different ways that fear is kind of used or shows up. So how about this one? So fear as a pull. I did a Facebook post on this in the group, maybe on my fan page, you can check it out. But it's really, if you are feeling some fear, it could actually be your soul like pulling you in the right direction. And instead of resisting it, kind of move into it and go with that. So dive in, your soul will thank you later. Fear can just mean that you're being resistant to moving forward, like it really can be. And what they say is like, and I'm going to give you some resources too if you kind of want to read up on this a little bit more to do some more introspection. But the degree of fear you feel can equal the level of resistance that you're feeling toward doing that thing. But the thing is, the more fear you feel about doing that thing, maybe it's your passion project, your business, speaking from your voice, or speaking your voice, showing up and shining, the greater the importance that thing might really have for you. Does that make sense? Because if we didn't fear it, if we didn't have anxiety around it, if we didn't have worries about it, then it would just kind of be nothing. It would be like water off a duck's back kind of thing, right? Does that make sense? So it's the greater importance. It's a sign that it is of greater importance to you, and that it might actually be pushing you in the direction or pulling you in the direction that you really need to go. Okay, next, fear as your wiser self. So, I was listening to Cheryl Richardson the other day talk, and she talked about fear of your wiser self and how fear of success and fear of failure, really, it's what do you think you're afraid of when it comes to that. It might be your wiser self telling you that you might have too much on your plate, that you're afraid of taking on more responsibility. And it's really the fear just kind of talking to you and saying, hey, hold on a minute. Before you take anything more on, let's clear out some stuff to make room for you to take on those new responsibilities. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, it's kind of your body or your mind's way of protecting yourself so that you can prepare yourself to move forward and move forward in a sustainable fashion. Fear can also be used for healing. So, what if a fear were there to wake you up to the things that you need to heal? So, for example, I think the post I did was on triggers, or another post I did was on triggers. So, I love triggers now. Like I used to kind of, maybe in my younger days, would be set off by my mother saying something or my brother saying something. And now it's kind of fun for me to look at them because I know there's growth on the other side. So, for example, we fear looking at the trigger, like something just like maybe we get upset about like someone said something to you and it just sets you off. Maybe it was an event or it's just some kind of incident that just sat with you the wrong way, like kind of made you feel a bit icky, anxious, mad, or kind of any of the above. Like you just kind of had this like, ooh, this kind of reaction, right? So that's kind of what I mean by trigger. But if you looked actually into it, and the act of looking into it or looking at it or just noticing it um, can help you become really aware, and it's actually really empowering. So, and we don't always want to look at our triggers. Like I'm not the person that even sometimes notices my triggers all the time, but I'm getting a lot better at them. And I notice that the better I get at like in that moment, noticing the trigger and saying, whoa, that rubbed me the wrong way. What was that about? Then the growth is just there. The awareness is there. So next time that trigger kind of comes to me, then I can manage it a lot better. So, right. So it's the act of looking at it, addressing it, becoming aware that is so empowering, and that we're really taking that hurdle that we need to do to transform and to get to self-mastery. So now self-mastery is where the freedom is, right? So we all want automation. Like, you guys are in this group because you want to automate your business. But self-mastery is also a bit about the automation of yourself. So, and we want this because we want freedom, right? Like we want freedom. And if you think about sometimes, you want to automate your business, you want to free up your energy, you want to free up your time. When you're kind of in that space of self-mastery, then you're confident with what you're doing, you're clear on what you're doing, you're clear on who you are, you're clear on your direction, and nothing kind of derails you. So a lot of times it's the fear holding us back from committing to a direction, from getting clear on where you want to go. But this freedom is actually, and this automation, and I will say, kind of comes from the self-mastery, that self-regulation, that self-confidence, and that self-actualization. Now, does that make sense? Like if you think about if you're feeling like really overwhelmed in your business or really overwhelmed in your life, right? You get some things off your plate, you get some systems in place, you declutter your closet, you kind of do all these things, and it just kind of sets you up for better success. So it's the same with fear. You address it, you look at it, notice your triggers, and just be aware and heal from that and move through that instead of maybe allowing it to derail you and or allowing you to react to it in a way that is unhelpful toward your goals in life. Does that make sense? Okay, I hope so. Fear versus faith. So a lot of people are, and this is like the masses. So if you are in this group and or watching this video and you are pursuing your dreams, then you are the minority, right? So a lot of people have fear of going after their dreams. Maybe it's fear of leaving a relationship. There's so many people that are in really unhealthy relationships and they just stay for fear of leaving that relationship. Instead of moving through it and looking at it and seeing the fear and noticing the resistance, you basically, like if you do that, if you notice the fear, move through resistance, you're kind of basically opening up, like cracking open your consciousness and becoming super aware. And once you're kind of cracked open, there's really no other option but to move in the direction that your soul is calling you in, and if that makes sense. And the idea is when you're cracking open this fear, is to be in a frame of mind where you're looking for the solutions and not so much the problems. And that will also help with your fear as well. So if you're looking for solutions, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so scared to move to the city. Well, okay, I'm noticing that I'm feeling fear to move to the new city, but what are the things that I can do to make myself feel better about that, or put some supports in place for me, for example. So does that make sense? So if you can let go of some of the fears, have faith that everything's going to work out. Like Gabby Bernstein says, that the universe has your back. I mean, I use that phrase all the time, kind of walking around. Yep, the universe has my back. It's all good. It's going to be great. Then you start to feel safe. You become more of an attractor of what you really want, as opposed to staying in a fear-based state. And then, yeah, to feel safe, to know that you're moving in the right direction, and really you're just going to start attracting and creating that for yourself. So moving from that fear-based living to the faith-based living. And when you are fearful of how everything's going to work out for you, just, it's that whole pulling back and saying, well, the universe has my back, I'm taken care of. Okay. The other thing I want to say is not to judge yourself, not to judge it or beat yourself up about feeling anxious or fearful of that thing. Just notice it, because once we start feeling judgmental, then we start beating ourselves up for being judgmental, for being mad at ourselves, for being fearful or anxious or resistant to moving forward, right? So I know I kind of felt like that a little bit last week. I was like, oh, I'm kind of feeling, that fear. And it's like, well, why am I feeling this way? I'm a coach. I shouldn't feel this way. I'm not allowed to feel this way, right? But then I noticed for myself, I was kind of spinning in a sense that, well, if I'm like, I was judging how I was feeling because I'm not supposed to feel that way, right? I'm a professional. I can, I help people with this stuff. So, yeah. And then a good friend of mine kind of said, well, stop judging yourself and stop feeling guilty about it. And I was like, oh yeah, wasn't it kind of a nice reminder? So thank you. Thank you, friend. Yeah, so it was kind of a bit of a repeating reality last week. I was beating myself up because I just had a specific anxiety around it, and I really felt that, that feeling of fear, that it just kind of wasn't going away. It was just kind of sticking for me. But it wasn't helping at all, the feeling guilty about it. Yeah, because how can I be the best possible coach if I'm in that vibe, right? If I'm in that vibe, and how can I show up for you guys as best as I possibly want to be when I'm in that vibe? So I knew that I needed to move through that. So what else can I say? So I want to kind of end this Facebook Live with this. So about addressing fear. So this is about being aware, looking at your fears, noticing them, not judging them, cracking yourself open a little bit, and asking yourself some questions about why are you fearful of these things, whether it's moving a certain activity in your business, whether it is something in your life, whether you get triggered by an event or triggered by something that your mom or your brother or whatever said, or your partner. I want you to give yourself a bit of a challenge. And because we're entrepreneurs in this group and I'm helping you automate your business, I would love for you to give yourself a challenge of something that you are scared to do in your business. So maybe it's going and doing Facebook Lives. Maybe it's doing the sales calls. Like maybe you have to pick up the phone and call people. Or even it could just be that you're afraid to start texting people and getting them, having conversations with them in Messenger or through text or whatever, inviting them. If you're network marketing, maybe you are scared to have your first home party, right? Or if you are just launching a brand new business, maybe you're scared to just tell people about it. Send that introductory email to say, hey, this is what I'm doing. You can expect this from me in the next little while, right? So I want you guys to give yourself a challenge. So examples here, like, phone calls, following up with prospects, showing up as you are, not who you think you should be. That's like such a huge one. And I think that that's a huge one, especially if you're into the personal branding and you really want to show up a certain way. Show up as you are, not who you think you should be. That's a really sticky fear too. Like that, it really is a sticky fear. So if you can start noticing that, that's an amazing thing to really work on. And that's been, I mean, a journey for me. I think it's a journey for everyone. So you could pick something that you think that you can do every day until you no longer fear it. So go to a coffee shop every single day and say hi to one person. That could be your challenge. Again, maybe your Facebook Lives, but you know you need to do it for your business. You can do that. Like, what is the one thing maybe that you aren't doing in your business that you need to do, that you're resistant to, that maybe you're scared to do? Choose that thing, okay? I think so. So I think that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you guys tonight. If you can identify a challenge for yourself and you want to share it with the group, definitely share it with the group. If there's anything that I can help you with to overcome your particular fears or challenge, please, please, please reach out to me. I love connecting with you. I'm happy to get on the phone with you for a few minutes and talk you through anything, give you any kind of advice that I have for you on anything. And with that, I will say thank you for joining me tonight. And I hope this Facebook Live was good for you as it was for me. Thank you so much. Have a great night.